This conference will now be recorded.
Hello. Am I audible to all?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good morning, all. Today's topic is shoulder dystocia. Shoulder dystocia is an obstacle emergency. So you all should know about shoulder dystocia and its management. Coming to definition, arrest of delivery of shoulders after fetal head has been born. After delivery of the fetal head, shoulder should deliver in a mean time of 24 seconds. If it exceeds more than 60 seconds, then we'll call it as shoulder dystocia. Coming to incidence, it is relatively rare, but nowadays it is becoming more common. The reason for increased incidence is in recent decades is due to increased fetal weights and assisted mid-pelvic delivery showing high risk of fetal dystocia. So generally, we are not doing assisted mid-pelvic deliveries nowadays unless patient comes in active phase of labor and in second stage of labor. Coming to risk factors, there are maternal risk factors and intrapartum risk factors and fetal risk factors which leads to shoulder dystocia. First of all, maternal risk factors, diabetes or gestational diabetes mellitus, which leads to macrosomia in the fetus, and obesity, which in turn causes macrosomia in the baby, and previous history of shoulder dystocia. In some families, there will be constitutional macrosomia, though mother is very thin. In that cases, we'll get continuous recurrence of shoulder dystocia. Post-term pregnancy, if the mother has crossed the term, weight of the baby will be increased, and which in turn leads to shoulder dystocia. And the estimated fetal weight, if there is any increased estimated fetal weight, and in multiparity. Coming to intrapartum risk factors, as we already discussed, mid-pelvic forceps application problem with mid-pelvic forceps application is we can deliver the head of the baby in case of macrosomia, but the shoulders bisacromial diameter will be more than biparatal diameter. So it is very difficult to deliver shoulder than the head. We can deliver the head of the baby with the help of mid forceps, but shoulders will be impacted under pubic symphysis. So in case of suspected macrosomia, we should not use mid pelvic forceps application and prolonged first and second stage of labors, and without when we'll call as prolonged second stage of labor, it is different in different conditions, without regional anesthesia and with regional anesthesia. Regional anesthesia means for pain relief. Nowadays, painless deliveries are increasing, where we'll give epidural analgesia to the mother in the first stage of labor. So in this case, in normal case, in nulliparous woman, more than 2 hours is prolonged second stage of labor, whereas if we give epidural, it is more than 3 hours. So in this case, we can wait up to three hours of duration for second stage to call it as prolonged. In multiparous, normally it is more than 1 hour, and if we give epidural, we can wait for more than 2 hours. We can wait for 2 hours, and more than 2 hours we'll call prolonged. And precipitous labor. Coming to fetal risk factors, generally plan for C-section if estimated fetal weight is more than 5 kg in non-diabetic women, and in diabetic women, we should plan if the fetus weight is more than 4.5 kg. In case of fetal ascites, this is seen in hydrops and anencephaly. We should plan for elective cesarean section. Coming to pathophysiology, To know something is abnormal, we should know what is normal and what is normal physiology that occurs during delivery of the baby. Normally, fetal bisacromial diameter, that is distance between outermost parts of the fetal shoulders, normally enter the pelvis at an oblique angle with posterior shoulder ahead of anterior. One normally rotates to anterior posterior direction at the pelvic outlet with external rotation of the fetal head. Bisacromial diameter will engage in oblique diameter and it rotates and comes into anterior posterior direction with the anterior shoulder below the pubic symphysis and posterior shoulder downwards. This rotation, this 45 degrees rotation will occur with external rotation of the fetal head. This is what normally occurs. The anterior shoulder can then slide under pubic symphysis for the delivery. With this external rotation of the head, anterior shoulder of the baby comes under pubic symphysis, and then anterior shoulder will be delivered by sliding under the pubic symphysis of the mother. If the fetal shoulder remained in anterior position during descent or descent simultaneously rather than sequentially in pelvic inlet, then anterior shoulder become impacted behind the pubic symphysis, or descent of posterior shoulder may be obstructed by sacral promontory. While engaging in the oblique diameter of the pelvis, posterior shoulder will be ahead of the anterior shoulder, so that they will not get impacted. If the both shoulders enter the pelvic cavity at a time, the anterior shoulder of the baby will be impacted beneath the pubic symphysis, or posterior shoulder will be obstructed. Descent of the posterior shoulder will be obstructed by sacral promontory. Either ways, will land up in shoulder dystocia. Obstruction of anterior shoulder is more common than descent of posterior shoulder obstruction. Anterior shoulder obstruction is more common. Anterior shoulder obstruction is more common than posterior shoulder obstruction. It is a hypothesis that the fetal trunk fails to rotate to an oblique position because of the resistance between fetal skin and vaginal wall, resistance of a large fetal chest related to biparatal diameter, which may occur with macrosomia because of rapid fetal descent, which may occur in presbyteric labor. This is the hypothesis to reason shoulder dystocia in case of presbyteric labor and macrosomia. This is due to failed rotation of fetal shoulders to the oblique position due to high resistance between fetal skin and vaginal walls. And in case of presbyteric labor, head will be delivered all of a sudden, and there is no time for engagement of the shoulders, and which will land up in shoulder dystocia. So we have diagnosed a case of shoulder dystocia. By knowing the history, will be know, and weight of the baby, will be knowing the macrosomia and diabetes in the mother and all the high risk factors. Then during the delivery, we find that after delivery of the head, trunk is taking more than 60 seconds to deliver. So by that we will come to know that this is a case of shoulder dystocia. Then how to confirm that this is the sure shot case of a shoulder dystocia? These are the two signs which we can observe in the head baby, so that we can confirm that this is a sure case of shoulder dystocia. First one is tactile sign, retraction of fetal chin to the maternal perineum upon the delivery of the head. This is the tactile sign. Here you can see the chin of the baby is retracted towards the maternal perineum. This is the tactile sign. And next sign is head bobbing. The head coming down towards the introitus with pushing but retracting back between contractions. With the contraction, head will be pushed out, and with in between the contraction, retraction of the head back into the introitus is seen. This is head bobbing. These are the two signs we see in the case of shoulder dystocia. Coming to complications, why you should act promptly and manage this case of these cases, or there are a lot of complications, not only in the fetus but also to the mother. So we should act promptly and manage the case of shoulder dystocia. Maternal complications are postpartum hemorrhage, uterine atony, uterine rupture, pathological retraction ring, vaginal and cervical lacerations, perineal tears, postpartum lower extremity nerve injuries. Most common mechanism is external compression of peroneal nerve and fistula formation. Due to prolonged compression, blood supply will be impaired and there might be leading to fistula formation. Coming to fetal complications, brachial plexus injury, these are transient. The baby will eventually recover. Most common is Erb's palsy, and other one is Klumpke's paralysis, usually due to stretching over plexus during passage of the fetus through birth canal and subsequent delivery. Other complications are clavicle fracture, humerus fracture, neonatal death, HIE, and caput succedaneum. These are the worst cases where fetus will land up in HEA and caput succedaneum, and finally it can lead up to neonatal death. So you should act promptly and you should manage the case of shoulder dystocia immediately. So first of all, you should call for help. Always call for help, and evaluate for episiotomy. If episiotomy is not sufficient, you can extend the episiotomy. And leg should be in the McRoberts maneuver. External pressure should be always suprapubic. In case of shoulder dystocia, we should never ever give fundal pressure. Generally, in the normal deliveries, we'll give fundal pressure to deliver the head of the baby. Once head is out, never give fundal pressure. If there is any there is any shoulder dystocia, you should always give suprapubic pressure. There is a lot of difference. If we give fundal pressure, already under shoulder is impacted under pubic symphysis. If we continue giving fundal pressure, this impaction will be increased and there is no chance of delivery of the baby. In case of shoulder dystocia and after delivery of the head, pressure should be, external pressure should be always at suprapubic region. And if McRoberts maneuver and suprapubic pressure fails, we'll go for rotational maneuvers, that is Wood's maneuver. Remove the another option for delivery is first removing the posterior arm, then the anterior arm, as it is impacted under pubic symphysis. Roll the patient to her head, hands and knees. This is all force position. This is Gaskin's maneuver. Coming to general principles, first of all, call for help. It is a obstacle emergency. Excessive downward traction and fundal pressure should be avoided. You should not give excessive traction. You can try for some extent downward and outward traction to deliver anterior shoulder of the baby, but excessive traction will leads to paralysis of like Erb's and Klumpke's paralysis. So you should not apply excessive pressure. Perform mediolateral or 3/4 degree median episiotomy may be useful to facilitate delivery of impacted shoulder. Generally, we will give mediolateral episiotomy in normal cases. If you suspect the patient may land up in shoulder dystocia, you better give median episiotomy or a 3/4 degree mediolateral episiotomy to deliver to increase anteroposterior diameter, and delivery of the shoulder will be relatively easy. And bladder should be always drained before delivery of the head, because after delivery of the head it is highly difficult to introduce a Foley's catheter to drain the bladder. So you should make sure that bladder should be empty before the delivery of the head is started. Coming to maneuvers, firstly you can try with moderate suprapubic pressure. If it fails, you can try McRoberts maneuver along with suprapubic pressure. Next comes Rubin's maneuver, Wood's maneuver, delivery of the posterior shoulder. Javnalis maneuvers, Gaskin's maneuver, and cledotomy and symphysiotomy. These are the maneuvers we'll try in case of shoulder dystocia. If everything fails, we'll do Javnalis maneuver, which means we will push back head of the baby into the abdomen, and we'll do cesarean section. It is not that easy. It is highly difficult to push back the delivered head. So generally we'll avoid shoulder dystocia by planning elective cesarean section. And next comes cledotomy and symphysiotomy. Symphysiotomy we are not doing nowadays. Cledotomy will generally do if there is a neonatal death. Moderate suprapubic pressure can be applied by an assistant while downward traction is applied to the fetal head. Delivering person should apply downward and outward traction to the fetal head, and assisting person will apply suprapubic pressure. McRoberts maneuver. The maneuver consists of removing of the legs from stirrups and sharply flexing them up onto the maternal abdomen. Both the legs are held by two assistants, and both the legs of the mother will be held with the two assistants, and sudden and sharply flexing them onto the maternal abdomen, which cause a cephaloid rotation of the pelvis, and which in turn causes increased anteroposterior diameter of the pelvis and sudden disimpaction of the anterior shoulder. This is very useful maneuver to deliver in case of shoulder dystocia. We routinely use McRoberts for shoulder dystocia. There are other maneuvers which we can try if it fails. This is a McRoberts maneuver. See, the assistant is flexing the legs of the mother to the abdomen, and also giving fundal pressure, suprapubic pressure. By giving suprapubic pressure, this anterior shoulder will be disimpacted and delivered, and also with the flexion of the legs, there will be cephaloid rotation of the pelvis, and which in turn increases the anteroposterior diameter, by which we can deliver the anterior shoulder first. Next comes the Woods maneuver. The hand is placed beneath the posterior shoulder of the fetus. The fetus is then rotated progressively 180 degrees in a corkscrew manner, so that impacted anterior shoulder released. This is easy to say, but very difficult to do. To move a impacted shoulder with two fingers is very hard. It is very rarely practiced. Most often we'll do McRoberts maneuver. If it fails, we can try for Woods maneuver. Another rotational maneuver. This is the Woods maneuver shown in the picture. By placing two fingers back to the anterior shoulder and two fingers in front of the posterior shoulder, we'll try to rotate the shoulders, anterior shoulder downwards and posterior shoulder upwards, so that this impaction below the pubic symphysis will be released and shoulder will be delivered. Another one is delivery of the posterior shoulder. Carefully sweeping the posterior arm of the fetus across the chest and followed by delivery of the arm. Shoulder girdle is then rotated into one of the oblique diameters of the pelvis and subsequent delivery of the anterior shoulder. This is how we'll do. First of all, we'll insert two fingers posteriorly, and we'll sweep the posterior arm of the baby towards the chest, and then deliver the arm like this. Then the diameter will be reduced, and we'll rotate the baby into one of the oblique diameters and deliver the anterior shoulder. Coming to Rubin's maneuver. Rubin's maneuver has two steps. Fetal shoulder rocked from side to side by applying force to maternal abdomen. This is the externally. First, we'll try externally. By rocking the maternal abdomen, we'll try to force the shoulders, shake the shoulders from side to side. If it fails, then obstetrician will introduce pelvic hand, reach the most easily accessible fetal shoulder, which is then pushed towards the anterior surface of the chest, then results in abduction of the shoulders and decrease in the shoulder distance. Coming to Javanelis maneuver, this is cephalic replacement into the pelvis, then perform cesarean section to deliver the baby. This is also very difficult. To replace the head back into the pelvis is a very difficult procedure, but this is the last resort we have. If you failed all the maneuvers and we can't deliver the baby, then we'll check for fetal heart rate. If the baby is having heartbeat, we'll try Javanelis maneuver by replacing the head back into the pelvis and then go for cesarean section. If there is no heartbeat, then we'll directly go for clitorotomy and deliver the baby. This is Gaskin's maneuver. Woman placed on hands and knees. Delivery is effected by downward traction of the posterior shoulder and upward traction on the anterior shoulder. By keeping the mother in all fours position. In this, we'll deliver posterior shoulder first, which in this position will help us to increase anteroposterior diameter to deliver the baby, and posterior shoulder is delivered first, followed by anterior shoulder. Coming to Hibbert's maneuver, pressure applied to the fetal jaw and neck in the direction of the maternal rectum with strong fundal pressure applied by an assistant as the anterior shoulder is freed. This is the maneuver which will not practice nowadays, because fundal pressure applied at wrong time may result in further impaction of the anterior shoulder. Coming to clitotomy, it is a last option, usually done in dead fetus, but the clavicle fracture is transient and heals postpartum. Generally, we do this clitotomy in dead fetus, but in live fetus also we can try for clitotomy, because clavicle fracture is transient and it will heal during postpartum period. Symphysiotomy rarely performed nowadays. This is the management chart. We have to diagnose that this is the case of shoulder dystocia by the presence of Tuttle sign. First, we'll try with the McRoberts maneuver with suprapubic pressure. Then we'll go for wood screw maneuver. Then Jack Wimmer's maneuver. Then we'll try for all fours position. Finally, if all the maneuvers fails, we'll check for fetal heart rate. If it is present, then we'll go for Javanelis maneuver by replacing the fetal head into the pelvis and then deliver the baby by cesarean section. If fetal heart rate is not present, then we'll go for clitotomy. By doing clitotomy, we'll decrease bisectomial diameter and we can deliver the baby. Generally, we do this clitotomy in dead fetus. Coming to post-procedure care, this shoulder dystocia is very painful to the mother. So repair of the episiotomy, and we should control any postpartum hemorrhage, atony, we should manage medically. And if needed, provide emotional support to the woman and family following traumatic birth and possible death of the newborn or injury to the